Folks, we just want to thank you this evening. This is Parent Supporting Parent. And we've got an awesome gathering of talent with Vicki Gallen Clark, who's going to be talking this evening about learning during the pandemic. I am Steve Williams, just technical producer, and we're going to say a word of prayer, and then I'm going to turn it right over to Vicki and her team. Thank you so much for joining us. Right now, you want to hit that like button, that share button, and you want to tell your friend that Parent Supporting Parent is live. Pray with me. Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity for ministry. I thank you for every member of the panel for bringing them here today. Now I pray, Lord, that you will use them to teach us. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Sister Vicki?
Thank you so much, Pastor Williams, for all that you do. I am so happy to really introduce the fourth of a series of Parents Supporting Parents. And basically, it's just what the name says. As parents, we're coming together, sharing our thoughts, sharing our strategies with you, parents and guardians. We're going to be very transparent. We'll talk about some things that have worked, some things that have not worked. So I'm just so excited for this discussion tonight. And who would have known that we would be, I'm going to use a term from Amanda Gorman, in the beast of the belly for the last year plus in this whole virtual learning? Who would have known? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, learning during a pandemic. Did our children learn? Did they not learn? What happened? What did not happen? What should be happening? So I have some my favorite people today joining me. And I think I'm just really blessed because each week I do have some wonderful people sharing words of wisdom, sharing their experiences. And tonight, what I usually do, I have them introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask you if you can just share your name, a little bit about your background, but more importantly, your role as a parent, how many children you have. And then we will go from there. I have a bunch of questions to ask you. So we'll start with Stan.
Well, my name is Stan McCauley. I'm married. I'm actually married to one of the panelists, Naisha McCauley. I have two children that are in school. We have more than two children, but we have two that are in school. One is 11 years old, the other is 10. And glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Stan. Always glad to be working with you, Tia.
Hi, my name is Tia Miller. I am a mom, an educator, and an entrepreneur. I have one son. He's 13. He's in 8th grade. And I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thank you, Tia. I'm looking for some amazing things coming from you. Okay, Naisha.
Good evening, and thank you, Vicki, and everyone out there for this opportunity. As Stan mentioned, I am the spouse that he was referring to, and so together we are raising those two wonderful girls, which I'll add on to what he said. One is in the 6th grade, and the other is in the 4th grade, and so we are parenting the two youngest, but as he said, we do have more, we have older children. Those are our two youngest who are in elementary school. And we've been all sort of hunkered down working from home since the start of the pandemic. And I work in the nonprofit sector, and I've been fortunate to be able to work from home. And so we have a lot to talk about, I think. So I thank you for inviting me into this conversation.
And I'm so glad that you accepted. Siobhan.
Good evening, and I thank you once again for the invitation to share this evening, Vicki. So my name is Siobhan, and I'm an educator and a mother. I have an energetic and curious 3-year-old, and I'm again happy to be here this evening, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So here's the first question. I would like you to reflect on the last year plus. I believe it was in March when the restrictions were put in place and the schools went virtual. Please share the last plus years of what that has been like, what that looks like in your household. So anyone, and I'm strictly talking about from a parenting standpoint. So this is a free for all, so anyone can jump in.
Well, I'll start off. For me, it's great because I am admittedly stingy and overprotective when it comes to the children, and so if the door of my office were open, I could see a real narrow path to where they're sitting, so they're like right there, and I had to be talked into letting my oldest of the younger daughters go to school because I wanted to homeschool her. I didn't want her to go out to the school, so it took some convincing by a couple of people to not do that. But now there was no excuse. So I'm very glad that they're here, and that they're near and dear. I probably say that just as a dad more than I do an educator, because my wife does more of the heavy lifting as it pertains to education than I do. But I love the fact that they're home. And I work from home and my kids are home, so I love it.
Right. Now you should go into a little bit more detail. What might an average day look like in this learning from home for your children?
Sure. So we had to, when we made the decision to do, well, I mean, everyone went to remote learning, but we made the decision to keep them in the remote learning environment as opposed to the in-person. And we immediately got into a mode where like, okay, well, they need a space, because when we first went home, like they were in their bedroom, like rolling out of bed and like going in, like there's a little desk, but it's like toys everywhere and Legos and all that kind of stuff. And that's where they were doing their work from. And so the more that we got into it, it was like, well, they actually need like a dedicated space where it feels more like a classroom setting. And so we revamped the dining room, like moved the dining room table out, went and got desks and chairs and like really try to recreate kind of like a learning environment. And so our day starts like a normal school day would, like everyone gets up, brush your teeth and all that kind of stuff, get dressed. And then you go into your workspace. You go into sit down in front of your computer and zoom in, much like we are right now, and like get started on your day. And so that's typically what it looks like.
Awesome. Tia, your son is a little older. Talk to us about what it looks like for older students.
Okay, so I can talk about what it looks like for us. So it's just me and my son at home. And for us, March 13th, I'll never forget that day, March 13th, 2020. Was it 2020? Yeah. And he actually was already on spring break at the time. So school started, I think, the week after. Everyone in the country or in Connecticut went to remote the week after. So at first it was very exciting. You know, he was excited to be home. I was excited to be home because actually I prayed for that. I remember saying, I wish I could just stay home, like work from home, and it happened. So he has an area, we have an office, so he has a desk. It was all set up. I printed out the schedule. I had a bulletin board with the schedule, what he needs to do, when he would eat, take a break from the classes. So in the beginning, we were quite excited. And then school changed as COVID updated. So at first it was completely virtual. We were all home. And then a lot of schools went to hybrids. Then he would go to school some days and then some days home. And then many schools in Connecticut had that Wednesday off. So we had all the Wednesdays off. So now his school is completely full-time. He goes every day from 8 to 3. And I'm actually happy that he's back into school now, because as a teenager or preteen, there wasn't very much socializing. So for his generation, all the socializing is online. So for me, I'm like, you're not going to go outside. You don't have any friends. He's like, I have friends online. But friends in my generation is we see each other, we touch each other, we talk, you know, like we're face to face. But his generation, he has friends online. It'll be a friend he's never met in person. So for us, I'm glad he's back into school. And like I said, you know, as COVID changed, the schools changed.
All right. Thank you so much. Siobhan, I know you have a little one.
Yes, so I have a little one, but I will say that our schedule definitely shifted with COVID as well. I too will never forget March and the shutdown that occurred. And I know we thought we'd be hunkered down for like maybe a month, maybe 2 months tops. And then it just kept going and going. And we were like, oh, okay, so this is going to be longer. I know initially our son was very resistant to the whole online classes. And you're like, well, he's 3. What kind of classes would he have? Well, he has music, he has gym. So he has different classes that he takes. And also we used to go to the library a good amount for read alouds and things like that. All of that became virtual. And initially he wasn't interested in doing any of that. So one thing I'd say is just being very flexible and being okay with adjusting and being okay with the fact that it was a little challenging at first was very helpful. And then he adjusted and he was able to do those classes online and see his friends online and be okay with it. But initially it was very, very challenging for him, especially at that age with the attention span. It was hard. Now we're in a space where he's okay with it. And we've definitely adjusted our dining room as well to be a workspace for him so that he can do his preschool learning in a setting that's more structured for him. And we kept to our schedule, but again, definitely different, definitely hard. The socialization was missed. At that age, they moved from parallel play to actual more interactive play. And it's hard for little ones when the only one they can do that with is a parent versus another child.
All right, so I'm hearing about the social aspect, and Aisha and Stan, I'll certainly come back to you to find out what you've done as far as filling that gap in for your girls. I'm going to read a statement from a recent Education Week article. It talks about the gist. As more students get access to in-person learning and the prospects for a more normal fall improve, planning for how to address some of the harmful academic and social impacts of the last year is imperative. What do you think, and Tia, I'm going to start with you because I know you've seen it firsthand. What do you think some of these harmful academic social impacts of the last year have been? What have you witnessed? What have you heard? What have you observed?
So from a parent point of view or educator?
This time I want to hear both because I know you have some insights to share with us as well. So both.
Well, so I work with students usually between 6th to 12th grade. So socially, they want to be with each other. And over the past year, we have not been able to be together. And then now that schools are open, they're back into school, but it's still the 6 feet, 3 feet distance. Some schools are still eating in the classroom. I know for my son's school, for lunch, he has to eat with the same people every day. So he may have a friend who is not at his lunch table. There's only 4 people at his lunch table, so he's not able to socialize with his close group of friends. So socially, once again, students are not, they're doing it online like how we are. They're on Zoom or they're on Snapchat or the different social media platforms. So I feel for the upcoming school year, that's one area schools have to focus on is the social impact of what COVID has done. As far as academics, students I feel are just easing by, just the bare minimum. As an educator, there were many times you're teaching online and they say, you're teaching online to a black screen because everyone's cameras are off. So you're not really sure what's happening as far as, are they paying attention? Are they in bed? Are they listening? There's been a lot of academic impacts and social impacts because of COVID.
And let me just dig a little deeper. What did you find yourself doing as a result of these students just not tuning in? What did you
Oh,
Fun.
so
How
for
did-
me as an educator,
together?
okay, so I started student learning pods. So I had lots of friends who would call me when COVID first hit back in March, and they were like, "Tia, can you come over here? I'm not a teacher. I didn't go to school for this. I have a meeting. I have to get on Zoom at 9:30, but my daughter has to get on Zoom at 9:30." So I came up with student learning pods. Student learning pods is the big trend. They're all over the United States. However, here in the greater Hartford area, I said to myself, there are students that are home, their parents aren't able to help them for various reasons. They're at work or they're not able to do the work. So I started these student learning pods. And learning pods are usually a group of students, 8 to 10 students. They can be in various grades, and they get together at a location, and they are there and they log in, and someone's there to help them. So myself as a certified teacher, I was able to help some students. I also had other friends who were educators who took the year off that didn't go back. I worked with Blue Hills Civic Association, and we did a learning pod there. We also have several learning pods with CREC. So the learning pods helped out a lot. So that was one of my strategies on helping. Just recently, these last 8 weeks of school, we started our first elementary pod. That's a lot different than the 6th through 12th graders, because the 6th through 12th graders, they log in and that's pretty much it. Are you doing math? Yeah, I'm doing math. Make sure they have their cameras on. But the elementary pod, it's like second grade. So even though they're logged in, they're still like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Can I get a snack? So it's literally trying to manage 8 different computers in 8 different classes. But the parents are so appreciative because they say, now I can go back to work, or I can go to my office for a couple hours because I can drop them off at the pod. So that's one of the strategies I use to help with the academic, impact of COVID.
Thanks for that insight. So Stan and Naisha, seems like you have everything under control with your girls, but I'm pretty sure that you've probably heard some things, or you touched base with some parents and maybe they've told you some war stories. What do you think some of the academic impacts that we probably won't even see for maybe a couple years down the road have been or are going to be as a result of this virtual learning?
Well, I am certain there will be academic impact. I can't speak for around the world. Most certainly here in Hartford, there will be academic impact. For us, if you have a protect the nest theory, take care of the ones that are closest to you, which would be our daughters. I think they are in a rather unique place and space for a whole number of reasons. It's sort of like a perfect storm of things aligning. Both of their parents work from home. We're always in front of a computer. We're always engaged in some sort of meeting. And, kids have a tendency to try to emulate what they see. So before all of this, they pretended that they were on their laptops. They pretended they were on phone calls. They pretended they were in meetings. And now they can actually be in a meeting on their own laptop. And so for them, it's sort of like mimicking what we do. So their engagement isn't that difficult. I know my daughter's 7. She really doesn't like school as much, I think, as she would if she was in school. But I told her not liking school was not an option or an excuse for not doing your work. So she's very much engaged in doing her work. My other daughter, Nia, she loves it. She would like to be in school, but she loves the experience and she's very, very engaged in she's doing extremely well in school. But a lot of kids can't get online. You live in an apartment building that doesn't have cable, or your cable bill gets cut off. There's a lot of dynamic impact that's going to be happening to kids within Hartford, which is the fourth poorest city of a city its size in America. And so where we have poverty impacting the education, there's going to be serious issues. There will be literally young people who will be 1.5 years to 2 years behind. And I don't know how you catch that up. I just don't know how you do it. They were marginal to behind to begin with. So there's going to be huge impacts. And unless there is something that is set aside specifically to bring kids up to speed or on par, the education gap, quote unquote, has become the education ravine. I mean, it's going to be severely impacted.
Wow.
I will say though too, Vicky, though, I agree with what Stan was saying, but the other element, and this gets to Tia's point about the socialization piece. What I've noticed in the girls is a decline in wanting to sort of get up and move the same way that we did before the pandemic. It is somewhat kind of like, I won't characterize it as lazy because that's not what it is. It's just like you're kind of been slowed down. And so it's easy to just say like, oh, I don't really want to do that. I just would rather kind of like sit here. So it's not laziness, but like we're going to have to turn kids back on. And maybe it'll just happen naturally because kids are, they just have tremendous energy, and all you need to do is put them back in a room together. And I hope that that's what, they'll just turn back on, and maybe we don't have to make up for it. But I think there might also be kids though, who have now become accustomed to a sedentary pace and lifestyle. And I think that's going to be a real big issue going forward of like it, because I know it's true for adults.
Yes.
And I'm speaking to myself about being sedentary. So I can't imagine what that has done for kids who now are just like, we slowed them down and now we're going to have to figure that piece out.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
The young lady that was talking about the situation with the socialization in schools. One of the things that I thought about from the very beginning was consistency across the board, because you're going to have days on, days off, COVID alert, going to stay home, distance, this, that, and the third, half day, full day, 1 day off, hybrid. And for the girls, all they've known is this consistent every day they go to school at this time. There's no in or out. But hearing what she said, I hadn't really given that much thought until now, in terms of socialization, where you go to the lunchroom, if you go to the lunchroom, and you really can't communicate. It reminds me of something I saw at one of the schools many years ago when I was out doing a school visitation. The kids are they're sitting in the lunchroom, and you can't help but think that they're being prepared for like prison. And so here you're sitting in a room, you got your mask on until you eat. You can only eat, but you really can't talk. Then you put your mask back on, and then you go to march down the hall 6 feet apart, stay in line. You sit down. There is no socialization. They're just in school.
Wow.
That I find extremely troubling, and just hearing that sends off like triggers in my mind saying, no, they're not going back.
So I'm going to come back to that because I want to really dig a little deeper into that whole thing. Siobhan, anything else before we change transition?
Yes. So I wanted to say, Tia and Stan, really going to take being very purposeful as educators and as a parent as well in helping the children to kind of realign themselves when they get back into a classroom setting. So what that could look like is really taking time to think about their social and emotional learning, checking in with the students to see how they're feeling, how they're processing everything, trying to be creative in ways where they can talk to their friend and socialize with them. It can't just be, well, we're going to just do this 6 feet apart and 3 feet apart and that's it. There has to be a little bit more to it, because honestly, all of the children, all of us in general have experienced, it was a level of shock based on what happened last year and our norm becoming something very different. So we have to find a way to acclimate ourselves to this new norm where children can still be children and still get that socialization that they need without it looking more grim and gray than it need be. So I just wanted to share that. And also, Tia, I love what you've been doing. I've been doing that kind of with friends and family members as needed when they have questions or things like that, just hopping on Zoom and helping their children out, answering questions, whether it's a math question or ELA, or it's something social emotional because the child's having a hard time processing. So it's important, I think, to just utilize your community to help with some of the impact academically and socially that's going to occur. And also, as a teacher in the classroom, we're used to being able to see the students learning and growing in real time, and we're able to address things as they come up. It's a lot harder when the screen is blank and you're trying to do that, particularly in elementary school where it's a lot of hands-on learning. It's a little bit more challenging in that setting to make sure that each student's need is being met in that moment.
So you're actually, I would like you to really hone in on that, Siobhan, when we do the takeaway message for parents. So I want to really talk a little bit more about the door that Stan opened when he talked about the achievement gap. I know in Hartford, I don't have the exact numbers. I have a good idea, but there are quite a few students who were supposed to graduate next month who will not be graduating. There are also a number of students who have almost, it seems like they just disappeared. Can't find, they're not at the home address, or maybe they've moved. The telephone numbers have changed. They're not showing up online. They're not in school. So it's almost like they disappeared. However, this is not a problem unique to Hartford. I was talking to someone yesterday who's in Maryland, and she talked about the thousands of students that they just can't find. My question to you is, as parents, what do you think the school should be doing? And then as educators, Siobhan and Tia, what do you think the teachers should be doing? Is there a specific role that they should be doing in this pandemic, or even though we're supposed to be coming out of the pandemic, what should we be doing to address that whole achievement gap? All the students who are not logging in, they can't find, what should be done? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll from like a parent perspective, I think Stan had touched on this in a previous comment about everyone doesn't have access to the internet. Like, let's just start there. Like, everyone just didn't have access to the internet, nor did you have spaces that you could divvy up your house into. Like some living conditions are such that, like it's a 1-bedroom apartment and maybe there's multiple people who are trying to get online in that situation. Like, so there were so many different scenarios that I don't think were accounted for by the school district. So a response could have looked more like, a team could have been organized to like go physically, and I know we're apart, but like physically go and try to connect with those parents and those students who were just unreachable. Like the assumption was just like, everyone has the same capacity as far as like even how to operate the computer. Like we just assumed so much that like, oh, just go online. Not every parent even has an email address. Like there's gaps that needed to be filled. And I think one way would have been reassign central office and like form a street team and get out there and start knocking on doors and making sure people had those basic things set up and organized. It wasn't sufficient to just tell people to go home and here's your Chromebook. Like that was not sufficient way to roll out this pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah, I would agree. I think schools are filled with administrators who supervise, empower, and resource educators. And educators are not necessarily technology gurus. You have a laptop, It's supposed to work, so it works. So you figure, well, get them Chromebooks.
Mhm.
But then you find out that the Chrome processor can't process a Zoom meeting. It just shuts down. So, and you ordered, 250 of them, and you're going to gift from somebody over here for another 500, and they're all effectively useless. And a lot happened very, very quickly. Unfortunately, a lot of what was happening was being so politicized that people didn't really have a chance to address the issues that were really critical. But having said that, some school districts and some educational entities did a really great job. So how do we take their best practices?
And give me one example of what that great job looked like so that we can have something to compare.
I'll mention CREC. CREC seemed to have their act together in terms of having computers, engaging the students. Now, CREC is a different paradigm than the public school systems, which they are seated in. So there's a difference. However, what works, works. If you're being given a computer and it's in a plastic bag, go pack, and everything you need is in it, and it works. If it doesn't work, you can go and get another one. That is what you're going to need to have to do. Their technology people apparently knew what kind of computer that they needed. This happened in March, April, May, June, school was out. It's amazing how many school districts did not use the summer to prepare for what was inevitable. And so I think that, we need to do a deep dive into how we prepare for allowing critical decisions to be made in what is emerging as the new paradigm in terms of technology. This was on the forefront. The pandemic just pushed a whole lot of things forward. So there were a lot of people who were thinking, well, this is where education is going anyway. I remember having conversations with people about, this is the new normal. And some of my educated friends were saying, no, 4 weeks, we'll be back to normal. Well, what if we're not? So we should be prepared. Now, I say all that to say this, that there has to be a better way to prepare for crises such as the one that we have. And I think people have to stop being protective of the way they do stuff and more embracing of what works irrespective of where it comes from, because it's almost, one's almost incapable of processing that you can't find 10,000 students. Where were they before the day before the pandemic? Are they phantom students? I mean, how do you lose 10,000 students in the system? 7th or 5. I mean, where do they go? And no one knows where they are. I mean, that I don't even know how you begin to process.
It's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
Hard to comprehend. Any specific role that the teachers can take on, given the fact that the students aren't logging in, I would like to hear it from a teacher perspective.
So the district that I'm in, one of the approaches that the teachers took was first you call, you try every means of getting in contact with the parents, so you can figure out what's going on. Maybe they don't have internet, maybe there's another issue, so that you can help. But I know that some teachers went and they did knock on the doors. They took it to the next step, and they did. I also know that we have social workers and things like that in our school, and they helped in that process as well to track down the students so that we could figure out what was going on and how to best assist and help. Because most times it was a matter of them needing something, or there being some kind of an issue that needed attending to, why they weren't actually getting on to their classes. So I have to say, the district and the school that I'm associated with, definitely the teachers did try and knock. Now, some people moved and did things during the pandemic, so they might not have been able to be found because of those reasons, but we definitely did show up. this pandemic definitely exposed a lot of needs that we knew might have been there, but in a whole new way when that was the only way to access the education. Also, the district I'm in, they put the lessons on a public access network so that people that did not have proper internet were able to access lessons on their televisions with
Oh, that's pretty
basic
good.
as well, so that the children could get it that way too. So those are a few things that we did down here.
And did you have success knocking on the doors?
For the most part, yes. There were a couple of occasions where no, there was no one there. They had moved. But for the most part, yes, if they were still residing there, between us and the social workers going and making sure that everything was okay, we were able to find the majority of the students. So it
Excellent.
worked out well.
Excellent. So I want to jump back to the role of the parent. So let's just say that there's only one parent in the household. I have 3 children, different age levels, 1 computer. So I was able to somehow, get enough money together to upgrade my internet. 1 computer. What advice would you give me? And all 3 are at home.
So they're all at home and they're all at Hartford Public Schools or CREC or.
Yep.
So the first thing is you're home. I'm the one mother and I have these 3 children. I'm home and I've upgraded my internet. If my child goes to Hartford Public Schools or CREC, they have a computer. So I don't have to go and buy one. So
Okay.
each child, let's say I have a kindergartner, a 5th grader and a 9th grader, they all have access to a computer. So I want to go back to the visiting. So the district I came from, that I know, they have family and community liaisons. So I was at a school and I was actually a family and community liaison. So at the school I was at, they had a social worker, a psychologist, and a family and community liaison person. So that person connects the family to the school. So if you're at a magnet school all the way in Avon and I live in Hartford and I put my child on the bus, I can't get to Avon because I don't have a car and I'm not taking the city bus. So that family and community liaison will text. There's plenty of times that I have emailed, text, call. Sometimes I text parents at like 9 o'clock at night because that's when they'll respond, or early in the morning, or I'll go to their house, or I'll meet them at the mall or the hairdresser or the nail salon. Let me get the computer and I'm like, let's exchange computers. You got the broken one, I'll give you the new one. So every child in the greater Hartford area does have access to a computer. So as a parent, I don't have to go and buy anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would do. But again, speaking of CREC, like Mr. Cawley said, they did a great job. They do have family community liaisons at every magnet school. They are going out into the community. They're knocking on doors, trying to find these students. One big thing that's coming up with this pandemic, a lot of high schoolers did not return back to school. And the reason why is a lot of high schoolers are saying, you know what, I can work. So instead of me logging in from 8 to 3, I'm going to go work at Subway, get a check and help my mother. So that's going to be a big change for the fall. I feel education will not go back to how it used to be. I think we need to kind of make a switch for those older students, give them the opportunity to go and work, and maybe you can log on from 12 to 5 instead of the traditional 8 to 2. So again, the pandemic has, it's done a lot to us, but I also feel that it's going to help us in a way. We had to think outside the box during this time.
So you said something about the education. It needs to change. It doesn't need to go back to the way it was. I want to definitely come back to that. What I'm observing here at our office is that there seems to be more males not logging in that are sort of like dropping through the crack than the girls. Talk to me about that. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I only can speak for myself. I have a 13-year-old son. He rather get online, like he rather stay home and go online all day every day, because he can sneak and get on gaming system while the science teacher is talking. I can go to another screen and game. Versus a 13-year-old girl, I have a friend who has a daughter. She can't wait to go back to school because as a girl, I want to socialize. I want to see my friends. We can talk about this and that. So I feel boys are a little different. They're okay with just, I don't have to socialize. I can just get on this computer. So perhaps that's why, just the way boys and girls develop at that age.
Okay. Any other thoughts on why it seems to be that the guys are just sort of like just falling through the cracks, Naisha?
I think part of it, and this is, I'm answering the question, but also I want to reflect on what Tia was mentioning too about like what she had witnessed and observed as an educator. Because I think how you show up as an educator during this time made a big difference too. Like I've seen over the course of the school year, because my daughters, although they both do remote learning, there's different types of remote learning. There's one who is in like an academy and the teacher is also home, and she has the one teacher and that's how they're doing it. But then my other daughter is in middle school and it's this hybrid kind of like in-person at home thing where the teacher is physically in the school and there's kids in the classroom and they are Zooming and the teacher has to manage the Zoom and the room at the same time. And I think that is problematic, has been problematic. And particularly if you don't have a teacher who can do that. Like, I think we asked so much of our teachers, like they had to, like if you asked me to do that with like manage the Zoom room, but also manage the in-person kids, like we asked some crazy things of our educators with this. So, and I've seen that not work out at all. And I've actually had to talk to the principal of the school with one comment the teacher made. And I'm like, are you sure you want him as a teacher? Because like the thing he said, like kind of messed me up. I was like, I don't know if he should even be teaching, but who you have as an educator makes a difference. And so to the question about boys and young men, they, I think, need a different type of teacher too. Like it's not, how are you engaging them in this? You know, I don't think you could just sit them down in front of a computer and say, click and open up and read this paragraph. Like that is a factor too of just learning style. And if, you know, so we just, it's been a very complicated year for all of those reasons too.
It really has been. And I know in the work that we do, we try to incorporate mental health resources because we're seeing some things that are coming out. I know that there's been some stories of the older students now having to stay home and as Tia said, maybe they're working and they're taking care of the smaller ones while the mom or dad goes to work. And that's additional pressure. Again, not socializing, additional distancing, you know, and you know, what do you think we need to be doing as parents, as educators, as a society to start anticipating some of the mental health issues that are surfacing, will be surfacing? What do you think we need to be doing to prepare?
Well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge the fact that it's present or that it might be present and try to come up with strategies to help our students and our children as they navigate this time. Having strong social emotional intelligence programming for our students and children will be critical. Having conversations, really checking in and letting them know that it's a safe space, that you can share. I think a lot of children have felt really isolated and alone and a huge sense of loss over this past year, whether it's just hanging out with friends, missing their proms, missing out on trips. It's just been a tremendous amount of loss. So acknowledging the fact that, hey, this happened. And if you're feeling, you know, down or whatever it may be, it's good to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And then you can kind of move forward from there.
Okay. I know there's been a spike in youth suicide. I know here at Hartford, we've had a spike in youth violence. And, you know, a lot of different things are going on. We could talk about the different factors contributing to that, but we're seeing different things surface. Anything else that we should do from a proactive standpoint as opposed to a reactive standpoint when it comes to the mental health piece?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, go on.
So I just wanted to say, as far as the social emotional programming that Siobhan said, I know as an educator, I feel that they need to have some emotional programming, but maybe not putting it on the teacher to teach. So I think going forward, maybe schools need to now think of not only having the second and third grade teacher and the social worker and the psychologist, maybe now we need to start having mental health providers in each school. So that's one thing. That could be for the future, that's part of a school staff, a mental health person, someone who does the social and emotional programming. That would be ideal. And as being proactive for myself, my 13-year-old, he does have a male, African-American male therapist. So I called his therapist and they Zoom called, and his therapist said, your son is completely fine, like emotionally, socially, emotionally and mentally, he's fine. So I don't really need to see him. So I kind of took that step to just have him check in with the therapist. So for me as a parent, I've been having him check in every 3-4 months just to kind of do a quick check to see what's going on. Because as a mom, he's not talking to me. And, he'll talk to the African-American male therapist, tell him stuff he wouldn't tell me. So to answer your question, maybe having someone in school buildings that checks in, or does a little thorough, goes to each grade, checks into whoever, and then maybe refers families to where they need to go.
I like that. Just being cautious or precautious. Okay, Stan, you were going to jump in.
Well, I have to agree with what she was saying. I think one of the major things that has to happen is that there has to be an acknowledgement that we have some serious mental health issues in the country, and there needs to be a reformatting of how we look at mental health, because mental health has a stigma attached to it. So many people don't want to seek out and get mental health. Mental health is physical health because your brain is part of your body. So, it's important that the muscle everyone uses the most gets the attention that it should. I think that one thing that the pandemic has done is it's given us an opportunity to refocus what is important. And I think that if we really, really, really embrace that the whole reason for education is to empower and educate children, and the children are first, then our educational policy setters have a unique opportunity to put the kids and the children back at the forefront. More important than making sure that adults are hired and that systems are managed, maintained, and funded, are kids being educated. So if we know that kids have to help support, and we know that distance learning does work, why can't we incentivize kids? Well, if you're working to help support your family, you could take this course at any time during the day. I mean, the course is the course is the course. There are different ways of doing things. Many, many, many years ago, when I was a lot younger, our public access station was one of the first in the country, along with a couple of others, that had MCET, which was the Massachusetts Corporation for Educational Telecommunication. And it was distance learning via the school classroom using your public access channel. I mean, there are ways and things that work. And if people would be willing to, put their egos second, their systems second, their fiefdoms second, and put kids first, what works? What resources do we have? How can we engage them? And I think until we really start operating in that paradigm, it's just going to be how can we get back to the way it used to be, because that served us best. Well, it should be clear that it's not going to go back. We should be prepared for spikes in diseases that affect your breathing, such as COVID or the influenza, which they're now saying is going to spike up. We should be prepared at a moment's notice to make that the paradigm. And if things go back, great. But we can't just sidestep all of this and say that we've returned so that we're blindsided, much like they are in India, but more on an educational idea or educational arena.
I'm
We
hearing
really,
some
really have
really
to
good
be,
things. Yeah.
prepared than more than we are.
Dan, you made me think about a commercial that I recently saw from the University of Phoenix, where you can take a class 24 hours a day, any time of the day, any time of night. And so my question is, why can't school systems be that flexible and offer something like that? To me, that would be great for that student who's working and supporting the family. So I can't, as that student, take a class between 8 and 4, but maybe I could do something 9 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. So I think that we need to really be thinking outside of the box. And I don't know if it was Tia, I think you talked about the mental health professionals in the schools. So you don't dump this now on teachers or another staff member, but you actually increase your capacity and bring these mental health professionals in. So this is what we need to do. I can't believe an hour goes by this quickly. I need each of you to talk to that parent who they're just ready they're just tired. I mean, they've been through a year plus of this and they are just tired. They've been trying to work, trying to make sure their child is on board academically. They're just tired. What would you tell them? And Siobhan, I'm going to start with you, and then Stan, and then Tia, and then Naisha, you will have the last word. Give some kind of message to them. What would you tell them?
You are enough. You're tired, but you can totally do this. What your child needs, you have. Utilize your resources, the library. Your child's teacher is your partner. You guys are partners together. Work with your child's teacher. Use your local church, fraternities, sororities, whatever resources that you have. Feel free to tap into them and utilize them to make this the best experience possible. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to kind of be done at this point. But just remember that at the end of the day, you got this. You do. And it's not going to last forever. Also, utilize resources online. Libraries have a lot of free websites. Schools have a lot of free websites. Try to utilize those things as well to best meet your child's needs. And if you see an area where they're lacking, talk to your child's teacher and try and figure out a game plan so you can work together to help your child.
Thank you. That's great advice. Stan, what is your message?
I would say ditto to what she said. You are by default, parents, you are by default your children's first educator. You've prepared them to be able to go to school. And so think of the school as an added resource to help you educate your children so that they can be prepared for society. The school is not against you. They're not the enemy. They're trying their best. You've dedicated people who are lifelong teachers and want to impart information. So be encouraged. Know that it is not the end of the world, but that it's actually an opportunity to move the needle forward. So think of it as a challenge, and that the solution can be very beneficial if you tap into the right resources.
Awesome. Tia.
Okay, so I talk to a lot of parents and I don't give the political answer. So I tell them what I'm doing as a parent as well is the countdown. As an educator, we do the countdown, and as a parent, we do the countdown. So at this point, I would tell a parent, you did an amazing job. You've made it till May. And basically do the countdown, like last day of school in June 11th, June 18th. I know for me, my son's last day of school is June 7th. So like Siobhan said, the support system. Once school is over, get your support system together. Take a break. We worked hard. I believe we should be playing hard. So when school's over, we don't have to shove them, immediately into summer school. Take that time off. Maybe go to the beach, go to the park, if you have to work, maybe you have a friend who's not working, she can take the kid for a couple days, and then maybe you take the kids, all the kids together on the weekend. But again, also giving your child grace. Like, we don't give the children, as adults, we have a bad day or a bad week, we can take a day off. We'll just take a day off and, you know, refresh. But as students, we don't give them that time off. We say, go to school every day, 8 to 3. Well, Mom, I don't feel good today. Oh, go to school. I feel, give your child grace, be patient. Also remember, we're all in the same boat, so you're not the only one. And lastly, things are moving forward. So count down till June, whatever day your last day is, and then after that, take some time off for yourself.
Wow, practical advice. Naisha, you have the last word.
I was searching around for a rubber band because I was trying to use it as my visual aid to say what I wanted to say, because I agree with all the comments that have already been made. So I'm just going to add, like, our brains are like rubber bands. They're not fixed. They grow and they stretch. And this moment in time may feel like you failed. You may feel like your student failed, your teacher failed. You may feel like everybody failed. But the thing about this rubber band, it stretches and it expands. And so we can give ourselves that grace that Tia talked about and get back in there next year. We're going to move forward. All is not lost. And just know that it's not a fixed in concrete. It grows and it expands and it stretches. And we can stretch this learning back out next year as we move forward.
All right, then. Thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. You heard it right here from parents, okay, talking to other parents. You are enough. You know, this is an opportunity. Do the countdown, take a break, use your support system, and all is not lost. So this has been a wonderful conversation. I thank each of you for being here and contributing to this rich conversation. Next week, our topic is discovering my child's passion and encouraging creativity. You don't want to miss it. And I just thank you so much again for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday right here at 6 p.m. Pastor Williams, I'll turn it over to you.
Come on and raise your voice and sing with me. Come on and raise your voice and sing with me. Millions of words can describe the feeling I have down inside.
It's hard to contain.
So I'll simply say,
Sing
Jesus,
Jesus.
I love
you.
I love you, Jesus. Come on, sing with me. Millions
of words can describe
the feeling I had down
inside.
It's hard to contain.
It's hard to contain.
So I'll simply say, sing Jesus.
Jesus.
I love you.
Because you first loved me.
I'm returning my love back to you. This is my offering. I'm returning my love back to you.